Front and Center. Front and Center. A focus on important and significant developments affecting the lives of Filipinos, not only in the Philippines, but also those living and working around the world. Join us in Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Front and Center, a program that focuses on developments in the Philippines, legislations that provides policies and directions that strives to promote a better economy for the country, issues that concerns the welfare and well-being of every Filipino. All of this and more will be front and center. So join me in this half-hour program here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You can watch this program over Radyo Pilipinas World Service via Facebook page live broadcast. Just access our Facebook page, Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You can also catch every front and center programs over our YouTube channel. Just type in your YouTube browser, Radyo Pilipinas World Service. The program Front and Center and the programs of Radyo Pilipinas World Service can also be listened to the following shortwave frequencies: 12.010 MHz, 15.640 MHz, and 17.820 MHz. So, join us for another edition of Front and Center. I am your host, Rey Sampang. The Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in a post on X, or formerly known as Twitter, last Monday night, congratulated Lai Ching-te on his election as the president-elect of Taiwan, saying he looks forward to a close collaboration, strengthening mutual interest, fostering peace, and ensuring prosperity for our peoples in the years ahead. This did not bode well for the Chinese Foreign Ministry. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning came out with remarks saying that the Philippine president gravely violated the One China principle and communique on the establishment of the diplomatic relations between China and the Philippines, seriously going against the Philippines' political commitments to China, and adding that it blatantly interfered in China's internal affairs. China made it a point to make it known or strongly deplore firmly opposes this and has immediately lodged strong representations to the Philippine side. China even summoned the Philippine ambassador to China, Jaime Flor Cruz, to lodge serious demarche and urged the Philippines to present a responsible response to China. According to a statement, it says that they suggest that President Marcos even read more to develop a proper understanding of the ins and outs of the Taiwan issue or question and come to a right conclusion. Meanwhile, the Philippines, through its Department of Foreign Affairs, came out with a statement that the Philippines and Taiwan share mutual interests, which includes the welfare of nearly 200,000 OFWs in Taiwan. The message of President Marcos congratulating the new president of Taiwan was his way of thanking them, meaning Taiwan, for hosting overseas Filipino workers and holding a successful democratic process. Nevertheless, according to the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Philippines reaffirms its One China policy. And with that, to have more insights and perspective on this issue, we have on our line of communication no less than one of the Philippines experts in foreign studies. Of course, we have Professor Renato De Castro. We fondly call him Rene. Good day, Rene, and welcome again to Front and Center.
Good afternoon, Ray. It's great that you brought me back to your program. I really appreciate the fact that you are very much interested regarding my views on a number of very important issues that affect our nation.
We value highly your insights and perspectives on this issue, especially when it comes to foreign studies and foreign international relations. Rene, on this issue of Front and Center, we're going to tackle about this statement of China regarding President Marcos Jr.'s expression of, let's say, congratulatory message to the newly elected president of Taiwan. Did President Marcos in any way violate the One China policy as alleged by China?
No way. because the message was conveyed through the social media. If that message had been conveyed through a diplomatic channel, let's say from the Department of Foreign Affairs, or let's say hypothetically, of course, we don't have an embassy in Taipei, well, that would be a clear violation. But the message was conveyed through the social media, and it's simply congratulating the fact that you have a president. He did not mention anything about Taiwan being a state.
Mm-hmm.
Simply telling him that it's great that you won this election, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he emphasized the common interests of both the Filipino and Taiwanese people. There's no mention of the fact that there's such thing as a Taiwanese government or a Taiwanese state.
Mm-hmm.
Although, of course, in reality, despite the allegation of China based on its its one China principle, Taiwan is a self-governing island.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not in any way governed from Beijing.
Mm-hmm. So what is the basis of this, let's say, complaint of China that the President Marcos Jr. of the Philippines violated the One China policy? In the first place, can you give us an overview or a context of what does the One China policy really composed of?
Okay, let's talk about, let's say, what the Chinese would call the Shanghai Communique, or sometimes we talk in terms of the One China principle from the Chinese position. There are basically three elements that we have to understand. Number one, of course, that once, of course, you would like to establish a diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China, you have to, basically take into account three very important elements. Number one, you consider the People's Republic of China, or sometimes called mainland China, as the legitimate China. So
Okay.
you have to basically remove, if you have any embassy in Taiwan or Taipei, you have to remove it. So you won't send any diplomats to Taipei, you would send them to Beijing. And all interaction would be, of course, Filipino diplomats interacting with their Chinese counterparts in Beijing. That's the first element. The second element, of course, is you consider Taiwan as a Chinese territory, or sometimes the Chinese would say a province of China.
Mm-hmm.
And the third element, of course, that the One China policy allows people-to-people relations.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have business dealings, you have consular relationship, you have, of course, even cultural activities going on. So this is allowed in the notion of the One China policy. Okay, let's look at. So this is the One China policy, but what you have in the real world are several One China policies. So
Okay.
you have to separate. From a Chinese perspective, is the One China principle, but in the real world, you have cases of almost 206 One China policies. For
Okay.
example, the United States, Canada, Japan, and a number of European countries accept the fact that China, of course, the People's Republic of China, is the official China,
Mm-hmm.
but they reject the second part.
Okay.
The United States, Japan do not accept the fact that Taiwan is a province of China. We can
Okay.
talk about the nuance regarding this matter in another setting.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you have increasing people-to-people relation. So that's the case right now. This is what China would like, a One China principle. But in the real world, countries basically have their own respective One China policies, not simply based on what the Chinese are telling them, and the principle. It's primarily based on their national interest. And of course, who defines the national interest is, of course, a sovereign country. So in the case, looking at the context of President Marcos' message, he emphasized the fact that the Filipino and the Taiwanese people share common interests. Number one, of course, is the fact that we have 200,000 Filipino OFWs working in Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
We have a very dynamic economic relations with Taiwan, trade, tourism, so forth and so on. And number three, of course, is the fact that both Taiwan and the Philippines are liberal democracies.
All right.
Both countries value, of course, the fact that they have a democratic system, and the fact that every a certain period they would conduct a free, credible, and honest election. And President Marcos' congratulatory message to Vice President Lai is within this context. You have one democracy congratulating another democracy, and it's not that has something to do with the fact that you have a Philippine government congratulating Taiwanese government, because we don't recognize any Taiwanese government.
Mm-hmm. Well, you said that there are different perceptions, or let's say
Policies.
policies
Yeah, policies.
on the One China policy. So China on this issue would like to ram their own version of One China policy.
Yeah, very
on-
restrictive,
yes.
very rigid, one China principle, which basically challenges the third element that you can
Mm-hmm.
have people-to-people relation.
Yes. And besides, the Philippines has a MECO, Economic Cultural
Yes,
Office in
and they
Taiwan.
have here in Manila, in Makati specifically, they have the Taiwan Economic Cooperation Organization.
Yes.
So those are, of course, they're non-governmental entities, and they operate on the basis of the fact that both Taipei and Manila accept the fact that they have a very dynamic
Mm-hmm.
people-to-people relations.
And in
That
the
is, of course, again
mm-hmm.
allowed by even China's one China principle.
All right. And in the first place, if China is going to be rigid on this one China policy, strict, why did they allow thousands of Filipino workers working in Taiwan right now? They would be
I think
asking visas under the Taiwan government.
no way, no way. I mean, People's Republic China, no way can they do anything about it. They got their visas from, of course, the self-governing,
Yes.
institution in Taipei. Practically, of course, this is again a position I would like to state from former President Tsai. There's no need for Taiwan to become independent because, in de facto manner, Taiwan is an independent government.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
Of course, that is rejected by, especially in the case of our adoption of our own very specific one China policy. We accept the second formula that Taiwan is only a province of China.
And with the result of this latest election in Taiwan, the democratic system of government is still in place. Uh, Majority of Taiwanese people voted for Te. We all know that he's a pro democracy. What is the reflection of the voting behavior in Taiwan right now?
If we just focus, of course, on the presidential, there's, of course, another dynamics that happen in the legislative. Again, looking at what happened in the past few weeks, China, of course, actively conducted actions that are aimed to intimidate the Taiwanese population.
Mm-hmm.
China actively supported, of course, the Kuomintang, which is, of course, friendly and close to Beijing, and, of course, has ostracized, has criticized the Democratic Progressive Party, especially Vice President Lai, and, of course, his vice presidential candidate, who used to be, of course, the Taiwan's representative in Washington, D.C., as secessionist, separatist. And, of course, China was very much active in the domestic politics of Taiwan. But by the fact that the majority of the Taiwanese people voted for the candidate of the Democratic Progressive Party indicates the fact that the Taiwanese people, the Taiwanese nation, are, of course, more than willing to
Mm-hmm.
defy China, to challenge
Mm-hmm.
China's agenda, to have, of course, a government in Taiwan that is, of course, friendly to Beijing. And, of course, again, there's something to do with what's happening. And in a way, also reflects the fact that, the Taiwanese people wants, of course, to determine their own future.
Mm-hmm.
This is simply a case of what you call the right of the Taiwanese people for self-determination, which, of course, is rejected by China.
Can we safely say that the Taiwanese people would prefer to be identified as Taiwanese, not as
I
Chinese?
think, yeah, I think that's the result of the separation between Taiwan and, of course, China, since, of course, you have the retreat of the Kuomintang forces from mainland China.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just give you a story about, when Mao Zedong was about to die.
Mm-hmm.
Mao Zedong was asked, the Chairman Mao Zedong was asked, what are two things in life that you have regretted?
Mm-hmm.
And Mao Zedong said, two. Number one,
Mm-hmm.
we declared a People's Republic of China, whereas, of course, the Republic of China went to Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, of course, is the fact that the Communist Party, the People's Republic of China, invented their own character, what they call the simplified version pinyin.
Mm-hmm.
In contrast, of course, to the writing that is still practiced in Taiwan, the classical. And according to Mao Zedong, we have basically planted the seeds of separation.
Oh, it's in their own doing.
Yeah, it's own doing. Mao Zedong at his deathbed basically admitted it's their own doing of the Communist Party and, of course, the People's Republic of China. And, of course, just looking at the action of China under President Xi Jinping, the fact that you're coercing, intimidating, threatening, how do you think? And, of course, what China has been doing to the people of Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So all the actions are primarily directed in encouraging the Taiwanese to develop their own sense of
Mm-hmm.
national identities, distinct from mainland China. And of course, always the rhetoric of China. You have no right history with it. Those are things that, of course, intimidate, basically mobilize a liberal democratic society like Taiwan
Mm-hmm.
to basically value their right of national self-determination. And of course, to relish and cherish their system of liberal democracy, which is, of course, totally different from the communist system of mainland China.
All right. Rene, if this is the case, and based on the result of the elections in Taiwan, will China resort to military use in order to, let's say, get Taiwan on its side?
Well, of course, I've talked with my friends from Taiwan, and they said they expect Taiwan to do acts of coercion, send their ships, their
Mm-hmm.
planes crossing the Meridian line, the imaginary line separating Taiwan from, of course, China in the middle of the Taiwan Straits. And China has been doing this since, of course, former Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, was it last year? Yeah, last year.
Yes, yes.
So that has been happening, and of course, the People's Liberation Army, Navy, and the Air Force has been conducting military exercises around Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
So that China thinks that this will basically intimidate the Taiwanese people, the Taiwanese nation. No, that's making more determined, of course, to ensure that Taiwan remains, of course, a self-governing island. And
Yes.
this was, of course, announced by Vice President Tsai. I will do everything that's necessary to protect Taiwan from, of course, China. And China has no one to blame but itself
Mm-hmm.
for adopting such strong arms measures against a liberal, a society that had learned to value and relish, of course, its sense of independence, and more importantly, their liberal democratic institutions.
Okay, this next question, Rene, will veer a little bit away from the topics that we're being discussing. But I just want to get your perspective on this. If ever China is able to invade Taiwan, what will it has an effect, or what effect does it have on the Philippines?
Well, of course, will be affected because of geography. And of course, our primary concern is the fact that we have 200,000 Filipinos working in Taiwan. How can we evacuate them?
Mm-hmm.
And just imagine trying to evacuate them in a, you know, in a battle zone, and where you have ongoing high intensity fighting conflict happening. So how can we effectively evacuate them? So this will be a major dilemma for our government. Plus, of course, given the geography, definitely, of course, one way or the other will be affected by the intense fighting that would happen. And definitely, I was in Taiwan last December. The Taiwanese military, supported by the Taiwanese people,
Mm-hmm.
are determined, of course, to protect their self-governing island against what they perceive as, of course, the efforts by China to effect a forceful and armed unification
Yes.
of their well cherished self-governing island, which is, of course, Taiwan.
Because I believe China sees Taiwan as a very strategic location, strategic and tactical position or location, in case it decides to go further than the West Philippine Sea.
Yeah, that's the Chinese military, and even some of military analysts and strategists in Japan, even here in the Philippines, and of course even in the United States, they call the Japan, Taiwan, and of course the Philippines as what they call the first island chain.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
That,
mm-hmm.
of course, is supposed to be, if you have to look at it from the perspective of geopolitics, the first island chain blocks China's maritime expansion into the Pacific.
Okay.
So, it's not only China that looks at Taiwan as strategic.
All
You
right.
have, of course, the United States Seventh Fleet, and of course, the Indo-PACOM in Hawaii, and of course, the United States of America considers the protection of the first island chain as a primary strategic interest of the United States.
Okay. Then going back to our main point of discussion, the Chinese Foreign Ministry or the Chinese government has summoned Philippine Ambassador to China, Jaime Flor Cruz. Of course, they would like to extend their complaints, about President Marcos' remarks or congratulatory message. If you were Ambassador Flor Cruz, what would you say to the Chinese Foreign Ministry?
I'll have to explain that it's not a violation of the One China policy. It's just basically an interaction of two individuals, and of
Mm-hmm.
course, the message was not conveyed through a diplomatic channel. So there's no way that you could consider it's a violation of the One China policy. The
Mm-hmm.
message was conveyed to was it Twitter or X,
Yeah, it
right?
was X, but it
Yeah.
was formerly
It's a
known as
social
Twitter.
media.
Oh,
It's a
yes.
social media, and it's just congratulating someone,
It
and of
did.
course emphasizing the fact that both Taiwan both Taiwan and the Philippines share common interests, common values, and of course, common fact that they are both uh, liberal democracies.
Mm-hmm. And many are saying that China is only sour graping over their
Yes, of course,
defeat.
it's not sour graping, Ray. China simply lost face, and of course, from the Asian
Okay.
context, losing face is something that's simply humiliating, simply embarrassing. Despite their efforts to intimidate
Mm-hmm.
The Taiwanese nation showed that they could never be intimidated by China's comprehensive power.
So
No,
just
bullying tactic of China simply will not work against 25 million Taiwanese who really value the fact that they have a self-governing island.
China just made a quote unquote fool out of themselves by doing this issue in front of the international stage. They just show the international stage uh, how immature they are when it comes to foreign
And
relations.
China is a sore loser.
Yeah. Anyway, but
Despite it betting on the on the wrong wrong horses, and they lost.
yes.
Yeah, the Gumindang was effectively divided into two. The party split and fielded two candidates. No, no wonder they lost.
Well,
Despite yeah.
my last question for today. Just want to get your reaction on this China's foreign ministry saying that the president of the Philippines, President Marcos Jr., must read more on the One China policy to understand it better. Any reaction on this?
Yes. Just a food for thought. Why not give the Chinese a dose of their own medicine? Why
Mm-hmm.
not summon the Chinese ambassador here by the Department of
Mm-hmm.
Foreign Affairs and scold him?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you allowing a low-ranking foreign minister official to insult our president? Right?
Yes.
It's a direct insult to our president, and we should not tolerate it. The Department of Foreign Affairs, the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, should summon the Chinese ambassador here and tell him, if you are asking our president to read books, we would like to ask you, to read books about how to become well-behaved, well-cultured diplomats
Mm-hmm. Well,
that really knows the in and outs of diplomacy.
I don't think they know the ins and outs of diplomacy.
Not, of course, the fact that they have what they call the wolf warrior diplomacy,
Yeah.
which has basically antagonized everyone.
Okay. Well, Rene, I know we're running out of material time, but thank you very much for your time. But again, my last question for today, I just want to confirm the President of the Philippines, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., did not violate any
No,
diplomatic
no, no.
principle
It's a
relation.
people to people. We can look at it as a people to people relation. The communication was conveyed through social media. It was not conveyed through the diplomatic channel. If it had been conveyed to a diplomatic channel, then of course that's a direct violation of the One China policy.
And with that, Rene, thank you very much again for your time and your professional insights and perspective on this
Thank you
matter.
very much, Ray, for giving me the opportunity to express my view to
We
the Filipino public.
we appreciate it very much and more power to you, Rene.
Thank you very much, Ray.
You just heard Professor Renato De Castro. We fondly called him Rene, our foreign policy studies expert from De La Salle. And with that, we bring to a close another edition of Front and Center. I hope you enjoyed today's edition of this program here on Radio Pilipinas World Service. Just a reminder, you can watch this program over Radio Pilipinas World Service via Facebook page live broadcast. Just access our Facebook page, Radio Pilipinas World Service. You can also catch every Front and Center programs over our YouTube channel. Just type in your YouTube browser, Radio Pilipinas World Service. The program Front and Center and the programs of Radio Pilipinas World Service can also be listened to the following shortwave frequencies: 12.010 MHz, 15.640 MHz, and 17.820 MHz. Together with our producer, Mr. Erwin Peñano, and technical personnel, Mr. Jerome Toledo, and Milo Jonella and Susan Aison. Of course, including our partners in the Voice of America in Tinang Tarlac. This is your host, Rey Sampang. Join us again in another episode of Front and Center. Mabuhay and love the Philippines.
You have just heard and watched Front and Center. Front and Center. Join us again for another edition here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Front and Center.